Hello, world, and welcome to a special interview from the Taxidermy Tech Network. My name is Sarah. I'm Ken's daughter, and today I'm joined by Allison Doty, one of our alumni who took 2 courses at Taxidermy Tech and now has a successful business called Morgue. So, in this series, we will be looking at the business of our alumni and also discussing with them any experiences that they'd like to share and any tips or tricks that they've learned about the industry. So we hope that you enjoy this series and meeting our students. Here's my interview with Allison. One of the main things that I wanted to talk to you about in addition to just introducing you to the network, the Taxidermy Tech Network, and for anybody that doesn't know you, because by this point, a lot of people already know you in this network, but then also to just introduce you in general to people that will be viewing this channel that are just interested in taxidermy. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, you, Allison, specialize in a particular type of taxidermy. And so we're going to get more into that. Um, so, first and foremost, I want to talk about the business that you have
Mhm.
and how long you've been doing work as a taxidermist, how long you've been comfortable taking in work in your business.
Absolutely. So I am Morgue Made Taxidermy, and I started in January of 2020, is when I went to Taxidermy Tech, and um, I did not have any kind of formal taxidermy training. I didn't even know what taxidermy was, to be honest. Like, I thought I was gonna walk into Taxidermy Tech and pick out what kind of eye expression I wanted and just plop it in, and did not have any idea what went into it. I didn't grow up with like a hunting background or family like that or anything. So um I started in 2020 just coming in hot. I was like, I'm taking customers, I'll, whatever I can get, I'm doing. And thankfully I had a lot of friends that were just into more of the oddities that isn't the same skill level necessary as, some other taxidermists. So I've been doing it. Well, January was 3 years, and then this coming January would be 4. So I would say I I don't even know. I mean, really, just after I left Taxidermy Tech, I just really like kept in my brain that like I had to just keep going, and I really didn't say no to any work unless it was something that I was like physically incapable of doing. I did say no to like a cow just because I have a shed to work in and I don't have, the kinds of supplies for that. But I didn't start taking pets really, at least cats and dogs, until I took my first dog about a year ago. And I'll tell you the truth, even going into it, it was a little jarring. I had worked on a few previous dogs that were donated to me. Um, and so I felt like I was comfortable um, starting on that first dog. His name was Whiskey. And I, let the owners know and everything, and had shown them the other two that I had done prior to that, that stay in my collection. And they were comfortable with that. And then they ended up being extremely happy. And their other dog also passed away, and I just returned him. His name was Scotch, and they were even happier. So
That's cute names.
they have 5 of them. So they have whiskey, scotch, malt, gin, and rum. They all have like liquor names, and they're like Shih Tzu Bichons. So they're like these little fluffy, hairy dogs.
Oh, that's really cute. Okay, so yeah, so that was interesting because you mentioned a little bit about there being different levels of skill required for certain types of taxidermy.
Hmm.
And so it's interesting that you say that the oddities require less skill. And
Yes.
in fact, the pet taxidermy though requires probably the highest level of skill. So what I'm seeing is that you, because what what I'm hearing, maybe you went home and then practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced, and it was just anything that came to you. And so
Mhm.
I'd like, yeah, to kind of talk about why it is that the oddities requires less skill than maybe doing a deer head for someone, a wild game there,
Mhm.
versus a pet that somebody sees every day and is encountering every day. What's the difference in the skill levels there?
Yeah, so and I don't mean to say this like bias because I can't speak for the whole oddities community. Just what I've dealt with is that people like bad taxidermy. And to be honest, I like bad taxidermy. So the only taxidermy that I buy to decorate in my house is bad. Like the stuff I've mounted is good, but the things that I buy are like very old or they were poorly put together. And I think they're funny and I think they're cute. And like I love them. So I also feel like there's just some mounts in this world that you can't save and they can't really be restored into anything better. And I think that there's a place for them to be loved as well. And in the oddities community, there's a very small group of like high end that are really buying $1,000 to $5,000 pieces. And to be honest, those people usually aren't really buying taxidermy, they're buying human parts. And I don't really get into any of that, but most of the people are buying affordable, I would say, taxidermy, and they like it where it's a little derpy or its eyes are a little crooked or it has a funny hat. And, that's what makes them happy. And I like to be expressive in that kind as well. Um, I do. uh, I'm a little in between because I do funny stuff like that too, but I kind of have become where I feel like it still needs to be anatomically correct, even if it's wearing a dress, you know? So I still see myself like working on eye sets and changing them. And I'm like, I have to stop because it's just supposed to be, funny. And then, you get into hunters and things like that and those kinds of mounts. And it's all like to me, it's all based on kind of who you know too, because every customer that I've had thinks that I am the world's greatest taxidermist. Like they, will go and I'm like, I'm not like, and I've done deer. I don't do them anymore. I did go to taxidermy tech and I did deer as well. And I mounted them for like 2 seasons and then realized I just like don't have a great eye for them. Like I think that that's where people that have hunted and grew up with that and grew up, really sitting out the woods and watching deer and studying their anatomy, they're just more into it than I am, and they have a better eye for that. But my customers will deny that to the death. They will say that this is the best deer head they've ever seen, and I'm like, it's not. Like, so it's kind of funny. Um, that can get very competitive in a way that I don't really like in my own personal space as far as my business. I just, I like to create art and I like it to
Mhm.
kind of be on my own vibe and I don't want it to be compared to the way somebody else mounted something, even though I compete in competitions with different stuff. And then the pet comes into like the pets with having that really high skill level. I had started I wanted to do pets and it was at the beginning hard for me to attain things to work on that in the case that I messed up it wouldn't hurt somebody. Um so it was kind of hard for me to get cats and dogs. So I was working on things like pet snakes and I did a lot of like bearded dragons and things. And even though it's still your pet and stuff, a lot of people don't feel the same way about them. They're more or less like, it's my pet, but I want a cool piece of taxidermy. So, some of the feelings change a little bit between pets, but not always. And once I was really like able to start working on cats and dogs, really was after I started competing. And I had gotten some first place. I had won some awards and I felt more confident in myself in saying, it's not just in my head that I think this looks good, or even that Ken is telling me, hey, that looks good. this is like pieces that are being judged and competitively are saying these are anatomically correct and you're doing a good job. And that was what kind of pushed me to say, okay, I think I'm ready to start taking people's pets and working on them. But it was kind of like a head first where I just had to trust in my skill and my eye for it, um, because I didn't really have a lot of practice animals that
Hmm.
were the same exact animal.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So that's interesting too, because it helps us to get into how you got even into taxidermy. Like you mentioned a little bit, like you're diving headfirst into this, like with no idea what you're getting into.
Yeah.
So some of what I read was that you, have a story about getting into taxidermy where it's kind of just by chance, but also that you've kind of also developed now this personal um, reason for being involved in it too. And so I'm wondering if you would like to share however much of that you want to go into.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I talk too much, just cut me off. So,
Great.
um, so I was a manager of a bar for like, well, I was bartending for like 11 years, and then I was managing for a while. My husband had his father owned the bar, and then he had leased it to some people, and we were both like, we don't want to work here. So, um, at that was I had been making bug jewelry, like, I have stretched ears, so I was making bug plugs, with like spiders and stuff like that. And, here and there, people were like, I had started to get interested in taxidermy. Good friend of mine, her name is Dakota Gould, and she's a phenomenal taxidermist. She's wonderful. I started like following her on Instagram, in like 2019. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I've never seen. I really hadn't seen a lot of taxidermy. Like I guess I had seen like deer on the wall and stuff, but kind of like you said with the museums, like I never really noticed that or thought about what taxidermy actually was. I was just like, oh, it's like an animal. And when I started following her, she has this like very creative mind that was incredibly inspiring to me and still inspiring to me. Um, and I started kind of picking out, and it's funny that a lot of them are women as well. There's like Lee Duckworth and Alice Markham, and they're these really, I call them famous women taxidermists that exist right now that are doing the same kind of style of things I like to do. And that, really was like, oh, wow, this is interesting. And we decided to quit our jobs. My husband decided to buy a truck and move sheds and stuff. And he's been very successful in that business. Everybody thinks he's the taxidermist. So when they, come here to drop off, they talk directly to him. And I'm like, he can't help you. He's not going to do anything for you.
You need a
Um,
shed moved? He's
he
got you.
does not even doesn't even come in my shop. So um, it was funny. And I found taxidermy tech, and I had talked to Ken and stuff. And well, right before that, a friend of mine owned a barber shop, and he had to ask me if I could mount some, like a rat diorama. Like I was all into that. I wanted to make those. If you've ever seen like the movie Dinner for Schmucks, that's like they have like all the little rats doing stuff. They're like anthropomorphic. So my personality is kind of that, like I just know I'm going to be good at things even though that is never proven true. I still just kind of have that confidence. So I was like, yeah, I can, absolutely. And I did. And they were cute and they were really funny, and they looked like his little barber shop, and it was one getting its hair cut, and I was like, man, I really like this and I want to do bigger animals, and I don't know how to go from this to that. And I found taxidermy tech, and my husband was like, yep, just book it. We'll, go down there, or you'll go down there. So I did. And that was definitely like a scary experience for me, to be honest, because it was out of my comfort zone. And I remember the first day, like, Ken had the bobcat on the table and he hands me a scalpel, and I'm like, I'm going to throw up. Like, I can't. I didn't think it was gonna be, even though I knew it was gonna be like that, and I was like, no, I gotta like get through this. And there was a lot more to it than I had expected. But I really enjoyed it. And I mounted my two bobcats and I was just like, wow, like I really did that. Like, um, and it was just interesting. It just kind of, in the last few years, I've really like found myself in this profession too, because it was I had no idea that this whole world that you grew up in of taxidermy existed. And I'm still like, I see the arguments and stuff on some of the forums, and it's funny to me because I'm like, what? I don't even know why this is happening. But it's been a lot of years of people doing very normal types of taxidermy. So then somebody else comes in and is like doing things that they might find like disrespectful to the animal, or, that's kind of stuff I've been told. Um, and it's part of the gig. And as far as like the pets goes, I don't pass any judgment. And I guess because I didn't grow up with the taxidermy world of like you went out and you hunted something and then it was your trophy to show it off, that makes less sense to me than saying I love my pet so much and I want to be able to keep them and touch them and smell them. Makes more sense to me. So hopefully it'll break kind of the stigma here at some point. But that was
Yeah.
kind of the start, and it's just been, I've been a Rolling Stone kind of since. So
Yeah, it's interesting. There's so many different um I was telling you before I started this, I looked into the history of taxidermy and so many different types of taxidermy. And what I really appreciate about taxidermy and any element is that there is some sort of like recognition of there being life and death. And so we'll get more into the philosophical aspect of
Mhm.
it too, but yeah, there are opinions, interesting opinions that people will have about, whether or not you should do a certain animal, whether or not you should do work like this on animals at all. But it dates back to Egyptian mummification. There's shrines throughout history of animals and things like that, and taxidermy in that way. So for the purpose of ritual. So it's interesting how, yeah, you can, now you're kind of like the new way of doing things, or just like an interesting new way of doing things. And it's kind of been that the taxidermy world, and not to say that, like, I saw as a kid, even there was squirrels drinking beer, things like
Mhm.
that, like all kinds of taxidermy throughout um my time, my whole life being involved in the industry.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting because I get this a lot. People are like, wow, there's this whole world that exists that I had no idea about, that you could get best fish in show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, so many people don't even know, like, and I didn't know about like that we have a Florida Taxidermy Association. And now, I'm going to be competing at nationals next month for the first time. And, people, I've been talking about it and they're like, we have a national taxidermy, like that's a thing. And I'm like, I think I'm going to start seeking out other hobbies of exists for these competitions as
right.
well, there's got to be some other cool stuff than just taxidermy.
Yeah. So another thing that I was going to say too is for pet taxidermy, like this is something I didn't experience as a kid, people calling about having their pets taxidermied. But when I started working for my dad as an adult and started actually taking the calls, and there was this man, and I'll never forget, because his dog had died and he was calling to see if we did pet taxidermy. And one of the things that he said was, and he said person or something like that, like this is the only person I had during COVID. This is the only person, or this is the only thing that I had during the pandemic. So yeah, you could just sense that there was this real deep attachment, and it was like a psychology question. This was like
Mhm.
this wasn't a question for the taxidermist's daughter. This man was like really distraught and
Right.
real bad shape. So that's something too. There's an element to taxidermy that is your actually like your relationship with your customer and their relationship with whether or not it's the trophy animal or their pet. They've got a relationship with that animal. So yeah.
I I get a mix of people. Um, a lot of my customers are younger, in their 30s, and they are grief stricken, but not in like a psychological way. And so they can understand that this is what they're getting back is not their alive pet. It's
Mm.
just an art piece that happens to look like their pet. I also only offer sleeping, like eyes closed, and they can choose the position that they want. But I do that really just because I've found um I did mount like my own cat, and of course, I'm not happy with it because it's my own pet too. And I had her eyes open, and what sort of happens, I think, with the eyes is that it looks like a pet, but not necessarily your pet. Um, and so that takes out. I know one of the questions was like the inconsistencies, and so that takes out a
Mhm.
huge inconsistency is not having the eyes open. I usually don't have anybody even ask for the eyes open. If I had like I had one customer that she was just very like relaxed and young and really just wanted her cat with her eyes open, and I did it and she was happy, and you kind of have to read between people. Now that I've been kind of doing it for a little bit and my name is getting out there and stuff, I have had to say no to some people. That man that you're describing is somebody I probably would have said no to,
Mm.
just because there are people that really have this unrealistic expectation out of me, and I have to make you happy. I can't send you back with a pet that you don't love. Um, and some people I just don't think I think that there is just like a disconnect at that point to where I would offer a different service, whether it be like a fur patch or like a paw preservation or maybe the tail to where they could still touch it, but it really wasn't like the whole pet. So it really depends too, I had a pretty scary run-in with a customer recently, and that kind of changed my mind because I was like sort of at a point where I was saying yes to things that I didn't really feel comfortable with just because some people are pushy and they're pushy about their pets. And I wasn't really like dealing with the confrontation part of it kind of well, of them dropping off. Like it wasn't any issue with them picking up and not being happy or anything like that. And so I've had to kind of like toughen up a little bit and,
Mhm.
you know, get past that. But
Yeah. So like putting your foot down about accepting work, it's just keep
yeah,
continues to.
so a big one was like, so the thing with pets is that if um they can't be sold. So cat and dog taxidermy is illegal to sell. You can pay me for the service of taxidermy of your pet, but I can't resell it if you don't pay
I
me.
see. Yeah.
So as far as like other pet taxidermists go, most of them do it's 100% upfront, and so that way it's paid whether you pick it up or not. I don't do that, and I don't think I ever will. I have a 50% deposit, and then I also can offer afterpay, so it will split that 50% into 4 payments because most of the time what I see, and by the time people have gotten my information to call me, they've called 20 other taxidermists that made them feel bad about wanting their pet either was planned to be euthanized or died unexpectedly, and both have are hard. So they both usually come with unexpected costs too, between
Mhm.
vet bills, euthanasia bills, just things like that, and it's all at once. And it's not been easy, I think, for anybody with money in the last couple years to say, oh, I just have 5 grand right now to spend on like vet bills, euthanasia, taxidermy, like upfront. And I don't want to
Mhm.
do that to people. And that's what I see a lot of. So I still think it needs to be like affordable, and especially at the beginning. And as long as I get kind of like my half paid for, that at least covers, the supplies to do pet taxidermy, to me, are a lot cheaper than ordering forms, like I pour my own mold. So
Mhm.
between using plaster, because it's only a one-time mold for each pet, and then like granted I pay for 2-part foam, but 2-part foam, a gallon of it will make a lot more than ordering one form. So
Right.
I think like when it gets broken down by that aspect, I'm still making money, and getting paid for my service too.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. So yeah, taking the least the part that's going to afford you the supplies, but keeping in mind for the sake of your customer because they have so much all at once with the
Hmm.
death of their pet to allow perhaps for a payment or something
Hmm.
like that, payment plan.
To me, it's like it's just not the important part, and I think that's where it's singles me out as a taxidermist compared to others, because most taxidermists that are working with game animals, it absolutely is about the money. Like that's, you may like to hear the hunting story or something, and that makes you passionate about doing it. But really, when push comes to shove, it's about money and how much money you're making and how quickly you can get it done. And those are not really the things that I deal with. People um, are, and I actually have a pretty short turnaround time. It's like 6 to 8 months, and I
Mm.
just moved to that. Like I was at 3 to 4 months for like a while, and I like to give myself a little bit more grace now. But most taxidermists, they're 2 years behind or so.
Mhm.
So I think people are pretty surprised when they can get their pet back that fast. But those are kind of the only things I'm focusing on too. So it's not like having a huge shop where you're taking 450 mounts in a year or something, and it's all different animals. So like you can't really be like, well, I'm going to do this today and then that tomorrow. I have it a little bit easier in that sense because I can plan out my weeks because it's like the same animals. So,
Mhm.
you know, just a little easier, just different.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's interesting. So when you start working on a piece, you're pretty much on that piece only and focused on one piece as opposed to uh well, in dad's shop, of course, because it's full service, there's multiple pieces going on, while something's drying. Obviously, you can do that too, but do you find yourself like really focused in on one piece as opposed to allowing your attention to divert into multiple pieces?
I do, only because I feel like each individual pet needs so much more hyper focus, almost like a competition piece, that I can prep and get, like I usually do like the first week of the month, I'll do all my most of my prep for what's going to be coming in the next month or next 2 months. So I can like skin and flesh and tan and freeze and get that done. And then I start to work on the bodies. So then I'll spend another week just molding bodies. So making my molds, letting them set, casting them, and then lining everything up. And then after that point, um like whichever pet gets pulled out, it's the whole next week is that one pet. But I
Mhm.
have 4 lined up, so I have my next like month planned out. And granted, there's things in between I do, because I do teach like taxidermy classes as well. So like I have one day of kind of prepping everything they do it all themselves, so it's not like I'm skinning anything, but like getting all my tools together and making sure I have stuff. And then I have like I do other things too, because I'm always like making things to sell as well. But it's my commercial work, like customer work, is pretty planned out in advance,
Mhm.
so I think that that helps me just kind of stay on the ball. And, once I maybe get somebody else in my shop to work too, I can change it up a little bit and have more time for other things. Or I don't know. I mean, that schedule works pretty well for me. So,
Oh, nice. Okay, you said the pet taxidermy was part of it, but then also commercial work. So you do pieces, I guess, then that aren't pets that are commercial work that you can sell.
yes, and I still take some stuff that's not pets. So I specialize in snakes too. So
Mm.
I do, and for some reason, like I'm definitely not the only Florida snake taxidermist, but nobody seems to be taking them. So I'll get like, I probably have like 50 or 60 snake mounts to do.
Wow.
And I get them pretty frequently. So, and then I do make stuff to sell as well. I
Uh,
would say the thing with me and snakes is funny. I don't have any formal training on them. And I didn't I just was like, man, they're just like way too easy. I can't be good at these. I can't be doing them good because they're just really easy. And so I competed this year with a snake and ended up getting a first place. And I was like, oh,
actually, I am that
so,
good.
I mean, I would say I enjoy them more than anything because they're the easiest for me to do, and I guess that's not everybody's same
Yeah.
taste. Like some people are like, I tried to do a snake and it was so hard, and I'm just like, that's for me then because I really enjoy them because they're easy to put together. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost hard to call each species like taxidermy, like to say like it's the same thing that you're doing because it is so
definitely
different
not.
between a fish and a deer or yeah, like for that to
And
be like said to be the same practice, it's weird.
it's so different, even in like a subspecies take of like doing like a parrot and a duck are completely different. Like, so and then a turkey's like way out there, that's different. So it's just like funny. Um, and I think we all like learn what sort of animals we're best at. And for a lot of people, that's deer, and that's where they're like they can really put a deer together, and it's beautiful. And then they can look at it and say, "Well, I could have fixed this or fixed that," and that's definitely how I am with snakes. And as for the pets, I carcass cast every pet, so
Mm.
anatomically, I mean, they're as close as they're gonna get. So in that sense, it's kind of easy. It's just more like work leading up to it. And I did like a couple bobcats recently that I had to mount on a form, and I was just like, I hate this. I don't want to mount on forms anymore. And I forgot how much like alteration you have to do compared to yes, like for me, it's like you doing the whole work before because you're carcass casting, but I get so used to doing that it's easier than doing alterations.
Oh yeah.
Um, so it's just funny, how everybody I think has like their one animal that they're like, yes, I love this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I never found that animal. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I actually did really like I got a lot of enjoyment, which is gonna sound really morbid, out of skinning ducks. So skinning and fleshing ducks was kind of my thing there for a minute. So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I hated flushing really bad, and probably only like the last year and a half or so, I've come to like enjoy it, and now I'm like, I like to do flushing now, so I get it.
There's something really satisfying about getting that
Yeah,
fat out with the
especially
wheel.
the ducks. Like if I don't know if you were doing like a breast incision, but like how there's a circle, like the skin comes off and it's like a perfect circle.
Yes.
If it didn't rip anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So okay, now we've talked about the kind of physical differences between the different types of animals that you can mount and things like that too. And also kind of the skill level that's required for various types of taxidermy. So one of the questions that I have, because I love philosophy and that's where a lot of my work is in, is philosophy. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share about how this art form maybe provides you with some sort of personal understanding of death, life, spiritual or philosophical thoughts about how this form of art puts you in contact with what is very real or very authentic.
Mhm.
And whether or not you notice the connection with that work feeling deeply meaningful, maybe because of that.
Yeah, I I'm not like a faith-based person or anything like that. So I feel very purpose driven in this career. And that's not anything I ever thought would have happened either. But after, like just meeting so many people and they're just so grief stricken, so like haunted by this image of their dead pet. And then they bring them to me, and they don't really know what they're doing either. They've been told they're crazy by everybody in their life, by every other taxidermist that they've called. They're really on their like last breath of like, I can't let go. And then, I give them their pet as an art form back, and they're so grateful and so thankful. And I've been like compiling a video of like messages that I've gotten just of people talking to me, and even the people that talk to me that is prior to their pet dying, like I haven't even done their pet or they haven't even brought it to me yet. They just like say really nice things to me, and that's not something that I'm that used to in my life. So I think that there's really some purpose behind it, and that's certainly like the fuel for me that feeds the passion to keep doing this. And I really do feel like I'm helping people. Um, and that's important to me, like to just to be whoever I am in this world, that I made something for somebody that really meant so much to them. And in a different aspect, like we did kind of discuss, when people go hunting and, they talk about like, it was their first hunting trip with their dad or something, and that same bond and same feeling that taxidermists get from hearing that story and saying like, well, this, I have purpose in this deer because it was a kid's first buck, it's really important. I feel like that with every mount. And although it puts more pressure on me, I feel like uh it's just like greater at the end of them seeing it and just being so thankful and so happy. And I think that it really takes away that image that they had in their mind of their pet dead, that hurts. And I mean, we see it all the time. Like we do it with funerals. That's like, you don't ever see the person the way that they died. You see them all done up and they look nice. And granted, you're not taking them home with you, but if you could, you probably would. A lot of people would,
Yeah.
so um it kind of is, a stigma to break. And like I said, I do offer all kinds of different pet memorials, including like bone cleaning or just the paw preservation, just fur patches and things. And what I'm seeing is more people are getting comfortable with this now that there is somebody like me that's saying like, it's okay for you to have this done. Like, it's okay. I'm not judging you. You shouldn't be judged on this. There's nothing different about this that it should be any other taxidermy. And I hope that for the future of pet taxidermy that it really just becomes as normalized as cremation. At some point that wasn't normal, so I'd like to see that happen, and hopefully I can be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's answers my next question, I think. But maybe you had have something to add to it of why do you do what you do? Why have you chosen this niche or just taxidermy in general, if you like?
Yeah, I it really gives me a sense of purpose. And even like taxidermy in general, for me it was just like I wasn't really I was like crafty growing up, but I was never artistic. I still can't paint or draw or anything like that. Um, and I always felt like I was supposed to be in that, but I just wasn't good at it. And my whole life, it's been like if I wasn't good at something, then I just didn't do it, you know? And taxidermy, I failed and failed and failed and just kept at it until I was good. And I had some really great mentors, especially like your dad, who he has said, like, I could cry thinking about it. He has said some of the like most inspiring and just incredible things to me that has really just like kept me going. You know, when I was like um, I had started like working part time for a big taxidermist. Lots of different feelings there, and essentially they wanted me to stop having my own business and just to work for them full time. And I considered it, and I had reached out to your dad, and he was like, "Nope, nope, don't do it. Absolutely not. Like you could work at any other shop, but they can't be you, you know." And I fought with like a lot of imposter syndrome, which I still fight with a little bit. Of just like what I'm doing is not good or it's not skilled. And I've balanced that out with a little bit about that art as a whole is just supposed to make you feel something. And it doesn't have to be judged on like a numerical scale or if it's perfect or like who gets to decide that? You know, nobody gets to decide what art is or what it should be. And I've kind of just been floating on that cloud of that. But really, older taxidermists too said one day it's just going to click. You know, the steps are going to click, and they did. And that's what I tell to younger people who are learning from me and the people that are taking my classes are like, it's not going to happen today, but it will click. Like if this is for you and you keep working at it, eventually you're just going to know how to hold your tools and you're going to know how to fix problems. But you have to encounter those problems to know how to fix them. And I did. And lots of blood, sweat, and tears went into it. And it still does, you know. But I'm at a comfortable level where now I'm kind of reaching out to say, how far can I take this? You know, and that's what I decided to, compete at nationals and really like how much more can I learn from this? Because I don't have a lot of places to go now that can help me mount pets, I don't have or even snakes really, or like how much further can it go? So I started looking into, like at nationals, they're having a couple different seminars that are molding and casting. So granted, it's not off of the same animal. It's something that I can learn to perfect from that point because it can be useful for that. And that's really cool. And I mean, I'm just gonna keep learning and going and see how it goes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, because there's so many different ways that you could go. Like we were saying, every species really, it's gonna have a different, set of skills that you have to uh get good at, and it's got a whole different set of steps that you have to learn and become comfortable with. But there is something to that, getting in relationship with whatever it is that you're working with, so that participatory knowing that at some point it just all comes together and you're just like, oh, okay, now this step becomes more fluid. And yeah, I just have like the motor skills just somehow all of a sudden
Yeah,
click. And yeah, it's just you've got the steps for that part of it down. So
the
yeah,
basics,
the
and like the principles, and like that's really, I think, probably when most people decide to quit is that prior to, because they're not, initially following those first 10 steps of skin prep. So then when they're mounting, it's not a good mount and they can't fix it at that point. And that's like disheartening. It sucks when you've got something all sewn up and you're like, that's not good. And I went through a lot of that. I've mounted like over 1,000 animals now, and granted, a lot of them were rats, but it's still just a lot of, learning and anatomy and behavior of animals too, because that kind of comes into it. but that's just things that your brain's not going to accept that at the very beginning. It's just too much information. At least for me, it was like at once. So I really had to like focus on my basic skills, and then I could start honing in on what I was seeing, and everything like that. And I mean, like I said, I'm teaching classes and stuff, and they're not anywhere near in depth as like taxidermy tech, but it gets people started,
Mhm.
and it's fun. It's it's been it's a wild ride. It's enjoyable, and I like to give like respect to the animal as well. That's like, I feel like if I can preserve an animal in a way where it can be remembered and studied for educational purposes or just enjoyed as well, that's like meaningful to me as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, totally. So, what do you think then were some of the greatest contributing factors to you having the success that you have? Was it choosing the niche? Was it the trial and error? A combination of those things or more?
um it was a lot. Certainly I think like the regular taxidermy community kind of as a whole, because it was just like always against it. Like it was, don't do pets, just don't. And I just want to. I feel like that's like the rebel in me is like, if you tell me not to, then I want to do it now. And but I also, like I said, had known that I wanted to do that kind of from the beginning, and I didn't realize that it was so stigmatized and that people weren't doing it. Like I didn't know that wasn't a thing. Um, but just a lot of influence. I have some really incredible colleagues um in the taxidermy world that, I have some that have been doing taxidermy for 5 years and they're in masters of masters, and I have some friends that have, been doing it for 40 years and they learned from a book, which is like incredible to me, because I'm like, I had the most like serious hands-on training, and I still didn't, like, I could never learn from a book. Like I could not be doing any of it like that. So it's impressive to me, and I don't even I don't feel like I'm like successful. Like I think I just keep getting lucky too. People seem to think I'm interesting, so I think that I get kind of like picked up for these stories and things like that, because it gets people talking. It's just not things that they hear about all the time. But your dad was like a huge influence to me, to be honest. I I he was like, I I don't know how to say it. So I went to taxidermy tech, and I definitely think that he thought I was one of the ones that was probably not going to keep doing this. Um, I know he really didn't like the oddity stuff, like when I went and everything. And so then just to see in like a few years, like he's become like such a huge fan of mine, and like so supportive. And really it's just very cool to have that kind of relationship with somebody that is so like well known, and just he's, I mean, incredibly successful, and taxidermy tech is incredibly successful. So it's like I love that, like that we can have a relationship where that, like, he wants me to be a part of the alumni and things like that, because I don't feel like it started like that.
Right.
So
Oh.
but just, we're all just people just like existing, and being able to share and inspire others, and it's cool. It's really a cool place. I have to say too, everyone that I've met has been open doors to me as far as like come in my shop and learn. No one really kept those like old man secrets of the taxidermy trade from me. And if we do, like, it's gonna die out, and it's kind of dying out now. That's really like, so I'm hoping with younger people, especially like Chloe. I mean, she's incredible. She's going to be world famous, really, probably the best taxidermist. And I'm like, that's my friend, 'cause she's something else, man. But it's so exciting to see young people get into it. Because otherwise it is just going to be a whole bunch of old guys that die with their secrets. And I don't want to see that happen to it.
Wow, that's so like philosophically rich to think about a ritual of death preparation
Mhm.
dying out. But yeah, like, and that being like so important, just anthropologically, just as far as like our human
Yeah.
history is concerned, we celebrate or we, want to see this animal as a trophy, or whatever it is, whatever it represents. We
Mhm.
want to see this, we want to, yeah, have this, and then that not be a thing anymore, that just literally a dying art.
Yeah, and I mean, we kind of saw it happen a little bit. So between like the late 1800s, like taxidermy was almost more anatomically correct because they were using like the real skulls and a lot of the real bones and things in it. And then when you move to like between the 40s and the 60s and even some of the 70s, when they started like producing forms and things, like some of the worst taxidermy was in those years, and it looked awful. And I think at that point it was kind of just like nobody knew how they were mounting things. So they were kind of just doing it on their own, and then they were keeping secrets and everything. And then, you start getting into like the 90s and stuff, and people are getting
Mhm.
serious, and associations are, getting made and stuff. And people are collaborating. And then you're starting to see, professionals and masters and things like that. And, world shows getting really good um, quality taxidermy. And so that easily could happen again, if people aren't willing to teach. And, in all aspects, like Florida has a lot of taxidermists, and we do only have one school. And
Mm,
that's where, a lot of states don't even have a taxidermy school.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
hard. Hear a lot of people online and stuff saying it's hard to get into this. And it's like, well, that's unfortunate. And I want to be a part of the change of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's actually, one of the main reasons I think that my dad really likes to have the community and really likes this idea of building out the community, because community has always been a part of our life, just because when you have a small business in a small town, you've got to be involved with the community. And he was doing a lot of community engagement. But
Right.
now with, cranking out alumni and having a school where, yeah, you can build a community that shares resources, shares information that they have, answers questions for one another, then it's actually an easy entry. This
Mhm.
actually should hopefully engage people and help people to get involved much easier. So I think one of my last questions that I have for you, besides how people can get in touch with you, is well, the reason that I reached out to you is because Father's Day is coming up. And so I really wanted to get this done for my dad for Father's Day and start really getting these kinds of interviews done with our students, so that also students can learn more about each other and engage more with each other. And then the wider world can learn about just this network. Because we're saying like the taxidermy world is so obscure. A lot of people just don't even know about it.
Mhm.
So I appreciate that about my dad, that he's kind of bringing to light this taxidermy world. And so I was wondering if there's anything that you'd like to say to him, or say about him, or yeah, just about your experience with taxidermy tech.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a phenomenal guy, man. I can't even explain it. He's so skilled and just such a great teacher as well. It's I'm probably like the only person that cried in taxidermy tech both times that I went. I don't handle like the pressure kind of well. And he was so like comforting to that. And I think that it was like maybe funny because it is like more of a male dominated field. And making your now there's a lot of women at taxidermy tech, so I love it. Like, we're taking over. And but I wouldn't be here had it not been for your dad, really. So, even sorry, even besides the schooling part, it's really been the mentorship behind it. He has pushed me and helped me throughout since met him, and is still continuing to do that, and has always continued to, even though I was doing things that he didn't do or even like at some point, he was not against it. And he still just supported me through that. And then now it's really turned into this wonderful relationship with him. And I hope that every student really that comes through there takes advantage of what they can learn from him, and just learning him as a person too, because he's just wonderful. like and I owe a lot to him, that's for sure, and I'm really happy to do this for him too.
Yeah, yeah, you were like super quick
Yeah.
and really willing, and so I appreciate that. So the last thing is, where can people find you, get in touch with you online in the 3D realm? What are the ways that people can access you?
Sure. So I do have a website, and it is www.morguemade.com, or you can just Google Morgue Made and I come up. I'm on Facebook as Morgue Made. I have Instagram as Morgue Made. I have a little check on me. So, and through email, phone, anything like that, that's all listed on the website as well. So really, anyway, I'm all over. If you type that in, you'll find it.
Yeah, and you've been featured in a few articles too, which was another reason it was easy to come to you and say, "Hey, can we do an interview?" Because you're trained for interviews. So, yeah, awesome.
Yeah, it's
Well,
it. I just want to like I really believe what is made for me will come to me. And as far as learning and teaching and things like that, I have no secrets to keep. I can't take this skill with me anywhere, when I go, and all I can do is leave a legacy. So I'm love doing interviews, love talking to people, love teaching. Um and a little inspired to teach, definitely, by your dad, because that's what he's doing, and he feels the same way.
yeah, yeah, totally. That's awesome. Well, thank you, Allison. Thank you for sharing your experience and about your business. And I wish you the best of luck as you continue to grow and learn new things and compete. And yeah, hopefully we'll be in touch soon and seeing each other as we continue to grow this network.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for your time too, Sarah. I can't wait to see, what you would put together, and what everybody else, that you're interviewing too. I really am excited to hear from all of them.
Yeah, me too. Awesome. Cool.